Hi, everybody. Thank you for joining me today for another CASEpeer Conversations webinar. I'm Gabriela Cubeiro, the CEO and co-founder of CASEpeer, practice management software built for personal injury law firms. And my guest today is someone I'm very excited about. I'm really thrilled to welcome Tom Martin, the CEO and founder of LawDroid. Tom is an attorney and longtime legal technologist. I have admired him from a distance and up close for a long time, and I'll let him take his introduction from there before we dive in. Welcome, Tom.
Hey there, and likewise, Gabriela. I've really enjoyed, in the past few years, hanging out with you at different conferences and having conversations and about our families too. And yeah, I'm really excited to be here and to catch up with you. It's been too long.
Definitely. So, today's topic of conversation is going to be a little bit varied, but we're of course talking chatbots. And it's funny because chatbots have been around for a long time, but they continue to be a big part of the AI automation conversation, and even maybe more so in the last year or two. And not just in legal tech. I mean, this morning I saw an article pop up in my newsfeed about someone who built an AI chatbot that helps someone speak to a deceased fiance. So the uses, go all over the place. Of course, we'll be focusing a little bit more on legal. Really quick housekeeping too, everyone, as you're joining us, there's a question feed. So feel free to chime in with your questions. Today we're going to be talking about security when it comes to chatbots. We're going to be talking about automation and how it can help power your intake and essentially your client care process. And I really have some specific questions about LawDroid. I want to dig into it a little bit, Tom.
Great.
So first and foremost, you started out as an attorney. You practiced some PI, I know, because we've talked about that. And then you got into legal technology. Can you tell us a little bit about that journey and what that was like?
Yeah, I'm happy to. And, back in the day when I was a practicing plaintiff lawyer, really could have used a tool like CASEpeer. Like the fact that it's really customized to plaintiff attorneys' needs, and that it, even tracks like demands and offers and lien negotiation, like stuff really specific to plaintiff lawyers, that would really come in handy. So big fan of CASEpeer. And
Thank you for saying that. And I will say I'm really excited about what LawDroid offers for a lot of firms. And I'm really thrilled to be sharing that with our audience here today, because same thing, especially for the small, medium-sized firms that do a lot on their own. Maybe they don't have someone that's just sitting there answering calls, answering chats all day. Really excited to kind of hear how these automation tools can help them make them more efficient.
So my journey started after law school. I worked with a lawyer who was really old school, and it was, basically he was a graduate of Harvard Law, and he had another assistant that drove him around in his Lincoln Town Car to go to dinner with his wife, and they lived in a very ritzy area of Los Angeles. And I would sit across from him with a yellow, legal notepad. And with a pencil, it had to be in pencil that I would take my notes. And then he would use a red pencil and he would mark out and make corrections. And so we would go back and forth sometimes over the course of a couple of days to create one letter. So, I grew up with kind of the birth of Apple and computers. And so working that way was really difficult for me to do it in a real, like, old school way. And so throughout my career, I've been trying to incorporate technology into making the practice more fun and interesting for me personally, like to be able to automate things to also accomplish a lot more. Because with automation, you could essentially scale your services and increase your reach, especially when you're working in a firm that's a solo or a small firm on plaintiff matters, where you're working on contingency. The money's going to come down the road. You might not have it right now, and you want to be able to make it through with as much efficiency as possible.
I think that's so interesting, and it's so true that plaintiffs firms, contingency fee firms really are driving a lot of innovation. And we see that, of course, in our industry because it's exactly who we serve, but efficiency is the name of the game, right? Whereas, defense attorneys, you're a little bit more likely to want to rack up those bills because you're getting paid by the hour. It's a very different kind of ethos. And I like that part of your journey. I think a lot of people here have maybe started out at firms that were a little bit more old school, and there's that clash, right? And we see that even today with the new attorneys coming out of law schools that are even more advanced and have even bigger and better expectations for how much automation they'll have in their life.
Totally.
So, okay, what exactly is a chatbot? We all hear about them, we read about them, we're talking to dead people. What is a chatbot? How do you define it?
So a chatbot, I mean, the definition is pretty simple. It's, a computer program that could automate a task or a conversation. But I think the kernel of that really leads to massive opportunities. Automate a conversation. Well, we as attorneys, or we have legal assistants or paralegals that have conversations with clients and gather information. And usually when we train a paralegal or an assistant to conduct an interview, we have a script and we say, if they answer yes to this, then ask them these additional questions. If they say no, then try these other questions. And so, we learned this in law school too, that there's flowcharts and logical relationships between different issues. And so what you can do with a chatbot is basically you train it once with a script that says how to ask the questions, what follow-up questions to ask, and you could essentially have it conducting interviews for you and porting that information into a case management system like CASEpeer, or also creating documents. So it's a way really of having a automated assistant, an automated legal assistant working for you, employing your best practices, your branding, and your personality.
The one thing too that's interesting there is a lot of these roles have high turnover too, especially in this day and age. Every law firm I talk to say they really struggle keeping, or like long-term keeping, staff that might be quote unquote entry level or be kind of in an assistant position. They, hop to another firm and all of a sudden all that's lost and you're stuck retraining. So I love the idea of creating consistency in that experience too.
Yeah, definitely. And one thing I like to emphasize is it's not a way of replacing people. It's actually a way of having in addition to, so that when people aren't available, let's say it's after hours, or let's say, it might be after hours the weekend, or somebody's sick, you could have this working in parallel.
Well, and actually I like that you say that because, chatbots are part of this AI world. And for, I think 3 years ago, every single article written about legal technology was like, is AI going to replace lawyers? And I think you and I talked about it. Like, that's the silliest thing, right? It's all about augmentation. You can work more efficiently. You can spend more time on the tasks that require more thought. And it's the same thing with your staff, right? Now your staff can be focused on maybe deeper conversations with clients along their journey, or they're focused on, again, higher level tasks versus maybe a Q&A or something like that.
Exactly. I mean, if you look at Iron Man, for example, it wasn't the robots on their own doing stuff. It was Tony Stark, like with Jarvis and with, the Iron Man outfit, that he was able to accomplish so much more than he could on his own.
I love that. So what you're telling me is that you're a fan of robots, not just in your work, but also, in the movies.
For sure.
Okay. Well, so let's dig into it. You've talked about it a little bit, but what are the most common ways that you're seeing law firms harnessing chatbots, or essentially this level of technology?
The most common way right now, which makes a lot of sense because it's close to the money, you can see some real ROI immediately from it, is to employ a chatbot for lead capture. So, you know, you could put up a lead capture bot that does what any other, you know, service like that does. What's your name? What's your phone number? We'll have a lawyer call you back. It emails the information over to the attorney, or it could even integrate with your calendaring system or port the information into a case management system.
So when you say calendar system, does that mean that someone could literally just book a time on an attorney's calendar right then and there, for example? Are there ways to do that?
Yeah, definitely. You know, we integrate with Calendly and Acuity Scheduling. So those are two of the most popular ones. If you have that, basically what the bot does is it captures name, phone number, email address, and a message about what they're inquiring about. And then it ports it over to Acuity or Calendly, and they simply pick the date and time, and you're done. They don't have to do any double entry, and it makes that speed to capture a lot quicker.
And then I assume, and this kind of gets us a little bit into my follow-up question, because I figured we would be touching on intake. So what is that experience like for the client and the law firm? You've touched a little bit upon the client right now, but for the law firm, so obviously they get a Calendly booking, or maybe they've built out a complex form. Let's say it's a mass tort, right? I mean, we have a lot of clients that advertise for mass tort. They might not practice actively, but that's where you're really asking a lot of questions up front to vet the case. And then is that something that could get emailed? It could be texted. What are the different things that the law firm can see to get notifications of this new prospective client?
Well, I'm glad you mentioned that, because in addition to personal injury, I think that class actions and mass torts are an ideal application of chatbot technology, in particular LawDroid, because if you're dealing with
of course
thousands, if you're dealing with thousands and thousands of plaintiffs, yes, you could hire a company to essentially light up its switchboard and have hundreds of different, you know, human agents like answering the phone and have a call center going. That's traditionally how you've done it. But another way to do it is you simply send out links to this chatbot, and you also host it on your website, and it could do all of that triage, all of the, you know, issue spotting, all of the intake of these various clients, and you do it in a very like straightforward, systematic way, so that you're across all of these different entry points, gathering the same information and being able to track it with analytics, as opposed to it just being verbal.
Oh, I love that idea. And actually, you mentioned something really interesting about having different links. So when it, you know, maybe you have a dedicated landing page for each different campaign. So, you know, sometimes when you're streaming things, I know a lot of people use different phone numbers and things like that. But, you know, what we also know in this day and age, there's all of the studies on it when we look at texting and things like that. People don't want to talk on the phone anymore. So how many people are you driving towards a phone call with very expensive campaigns when really they might prefer to sit there and fill out a form for 10 minutes? You know, it goes both ways. It's probably good to do a little bit of both, but I love the idea of driving traffic to something like that. And it's more engaging than just a form, right? And you'll tell us a little bit more about that.
Yeah, I mean, for any plaintiff's lawyer out there, I know you know this experience because I've had it myself hundreds and hundreds of times. Somebody, you know, somebody's interested, they submit their form, then you try to call them, and then you don't get them. It goes to voicemail, or it says, sorry, this, you know, this mailbox has not been set up, and you're cut off. Like, even though you tried to reach out to them immediately, according to
or they put a typo in their email, you know, because they're doing it on their phone. Yeah.
And then you lost them. And we all know that you're spending hundreds, if not thousands of dollars to get, you know, sometimes one conversion, one lead. So that, like, you want to get the most from your money. And so the way that we do it is having that immediate engagement. Like you're saying, Gabriela, it's like 70% of people prefer to have immediate engagement, because that's what they expect with other businesses.
Well, okay, so I have a question, because we have a mutual friend and client who I know you've even personalized a chatbot where it's like a person, right? Like they've got a little cartoon character, and it's someone, it's a face. And So when we talk about that client experience, it's not just like you're, trying to, I don't know, reach out to State Farm support through like, chat or text or something. It can be really customized and very engaging, right?
Yeah, it definitely can be. I mean, it could be as customized, as personalized, reflecting your branding and your personality as you want it to be.
Hmm.
Um, and it's really important because you want to convey that. You want to have people understand what they're going to get from you, and be able to connect with you in that way is something that sometimes gets lost when you have that
Hmm.
initial contact. And being able to include video, able to include multimedia within a chatbot conversation. It's not just text. You could really display your own personality.
I love that. I love that. So, talk to me a little bit about what makes LawDroid different from other chatbots. Because there's different like live chats you can use. How is this different?
There's a lot of ways we're different. One is with kind of your we call them legacy platforms that do live chat, where you're paying for human agents to interact with your potential leads. They charge a lot. It usually costs between $30 to $50 per lead to capture leads. And when you think about what are they doing, and I've interacted with a lot of live chat widgets, they're asking what's your name, what's your phone number. We'll have a lawyer call you back. Why do you need a person to be doing that? There's possible error, and also it's just overpaying. So we offer a flat fee pricing. So that's one
Hmm.
way we're different. The second way we're different is that we do so much more than lead capture. Um, Once you capture the lead, we could do client intake to do a short interview to get all the information you need for your case. Then after that, we have milestones where we could check in with clients and provide them information about where they're at in their case at that moment. One
Hmm.
of the number one bar complaints is lack of communication. So you can really fill that gap by having chatbots communicate about milestones.
Hmm.
And the last way is if there's any documents you need created, for example, discovery responses, you can include documents and have the client answer the questions and essentially form fill the documents automatically with our responses, and still have a lawyer go over it to make sure it's perfect, but it saves a ton of time. So we actually cover and one last thing is asking for reviews at the end of it. And then for those that have positive reviews, sending them to Google, and those that don't, you capture that useful feedback. So we cover the whole client life cycle.
Well, I'll just tell you this, Tom, you've been really busy because your guys' platform has grown a lot since the last time we talked, and that's really exciting.
It really is. And the reason why I work so hard at this is because I have been in your shoes. Like I know the lawyers that are out there and how hard they're working. And so I've really worked my heart out to create a tool that will help them to do their job better, free them up to work on the more interesting parts of their case and automate the boring stuff.
Yeah, I think that's actually a really interesting focus because the couple things that you mentioned, the 5 or 6 things, they're all pain points that I feel like, 98% of my clients talk to me about, right? And so I love that. And my next question is, how hard is it to implement something like this? I know you guys are a no code platform, right? So what does that mean? And like, let's say someone wants to build out a couple of the things you mentioned. What does that look like?
Yeah, so that term's been bandied about a lot lately, no code. And so what does it mean? It means that traditionally, you would, if you wanted to create a chatbot, you might, especially with all of these different things going on that I've been talking about, including natural language processing, including like answering frequently asked questions, you would likely have to go to a coder to create this thing for you because it would have some real custom elements beyond what a normal chatbot might have. And so the no code means that you can jump onto our platform, you could drag and drop, you could create these relationships between different parts of a conversation, and it's a very easy and intuitive system. I like to say that if you can create a flowchart, you can create a bot in our system. And it's so easy, in fact, that a law professor out of Oklahoma had a group of students create a bot that automated like 3 different divorce forms, and they did it within a couple of weeks. And they actually got a great grade in their class for what they created. So I'm really proud of how easy it is to use.
That's really awesome to hear. I'm actually just hopping back here to one of the earlier slides, because when you talk about flowchart, it's also just a really beautiful visual, which I think is important, because I imagine there's different conditionals and things like that, that if they answer this, it might stem here. And I mean, the user interface for it looks really beautiful. And I know people can book a demo with you to learn more about it, but I did want to show this screen. I don't know if you have anything else that you want to highlight on here before I hop back into the presentation.
Well, just our little mascot there has his construction hat on, because, yeah, we call this platform LawDroid Builder, because you know, it really allows you to build for your needs. And in addition to it being no code, in addition to it being easy, one last thing I'll mention is we also have templates. So for some of these bots that are pretty common, like a lead capture bot, we actually have a template where you just click one button and it auto creates that whole bot in your system without you having to do anything. The only thing that you have to do is maybe like customize the name of your firm and play around with the branding colors and things like that, but it saves a ton of time.
That's really cool. And, you know, at CASEpeer, we're fans of anything that can be turnkey, because most firms don't have a lot of time to implement these things, and they might later, but they like to be able to get started and hit the ground running. So I love that you guys do that. So one of the things when we've talked about chatbots in the past, I mean, obviously we're collecting sensitive information. I know this is something that we think about a lot at CASEpeer too. So how are you guys handling that, you know, up to different, you know, the legal, ethical, and security standards?
Yeah, so as a lawyer myself, I completely appreciate the need for confidentiality, attorney-client privilege, and handling sensitive information. The way we do that on the technical side is pretty standard, state of the art. You know, every like vendor like us, when we're asked about it, you know, you use an SSL certificate, you have encryption in transit so that when the data is flowing through there, it's encrypted, and then when it goes into the database where it's resting, it's encrypted at rest. So that's pretty standard for the course, and it's kind of the equivalent of having a lock in your door, so that you know, if you had to explain to the bar that they broke in and they stole the files, well, I did have a lock on the door. I was taking reasonable precautions. It's kind of the same thing with the SSL certificate and encryption. But going beyond that, I would think that what's even more important is what I'm calling ethical security standards. And so what we provide in addition to the technical part is when somebody interacts with the bot, we initially have a disclaimer. We initially inform them that the bot is not an attorney. And there's a lot of like disclaimers and disclosures that the bot does first, including disclosing that it's a bot, because in California, it's state law that you need to disclose it's a bot. Now, what's beautiful about our system is that as the person goes through and answers those questions, we have a log, and the log shows exactly how they answered. So like in the future, if you had a malpractice suit or some ethical question that came up, and then the client is saying, well, I don't understand. I thought that, you know, I was talking to a lawyer at that point. You could actually point to our log and say, well, we have this disclaimer here, and you said, yes, I acknowledge that there's no attorney-client privilege because I'm talking to a bot. You know, it's kind of your get out of jail free card, because you have objective evidence of what was discussed. And so that's just as important as technical security.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And it's interesting to hear too that different states, obviously, unsurprisingly, California always leads the charge with these things, but to know that there's different restrictions in place on this kind of tech too.
For sure.
So I guess one thing too, you talked about natural language, we talked about the data you're collecting. How exactly does LawDroid use this data to make decisions?
So this is one of the parts of LawDroid that I'm most proud of. Um, a lot of vendors, we talk about analytics, like we have great analytics, and for a chatbot, it might be like the volume of people visiting the website, how many use the bot, how many conversations, messages, things like that. That's par for the course. But I think where we shine is in all of those different decisions that I was talking about. Like, let's make it simple. Like, would you like a pizza? Yes, no, right? Well, we actually track the percentage and actual number of people that clicked on yes, people that clicked on no. Now, one that's relevant to PI lawyers is, what part of your body sustained an injury? Neck, back, hands, or what have you. And also can associate values with those different injuries. So once that information is gathered across a number of different leads, a number of different clients, you could actually look in and you can pinpoint percentages. So now the lawyer is getting like an in-depth insight into exactly how their clients are breaking down across every single point in the conversation and gathering data for each and every single, data point. So they can actually make data-driven decisions at this point, literally, as opposed to, I kind of feel that we're getting a lot of people with neck injuries or a lot of people with soft tissue, right? Like, instead of seat of your pants, it's actually by the numbers.
I love that. I always give the example of, we're data junkies here at CASEpeer too. And I'll never forget a client that was telling me they always thought that there was one judge in particular that seemed a little bit friendlier towards plaintiffs. And then when he started to track his cases in CASEpeer and he was seeing he could look up his judge contact history, he was like, gosh, actually, I don't do that well when I come up against this judge out here in California. So it's funny how you might have a sense of things because maybe someone's really friendly, or I have people that say I had a great month last month and I don't know why. I hear that one a lot. Or a bad month and I don't know why, right? And data is king. That's the only way that you can actually make wise business decisions. We all know that.
Yeah, so I think that behavioral analytics that we have makes us stand apart.
Absolutely. And how easy is it to pull up those kinds of reports? Do you need to build them out in LawDroid, or are they easy to build out? What does that look like?
Actually, that's all pre-built, so you don't have to do anything there. You just click on a tab that says Insights, and then that takes you through a window where you scroll through all of the different decisions. You can see the breakdowns by percentage and also the absolute numbers of who clicked on what.
That's really cool. Can I ask you a question? I don't have a dedicated slide of this, but I'm so interested in the natural language kind of capabilities of technology like this. People have different ways of responding to different things. Do you have to anticipate all of that when you're building these conditionals? I mean, I guess I'm thinking, let's make it something basic, like you're asking a yes or no question. Would you typically allow the person to type a yes or no response kind of thing? Like they could say, yeah, yep, I don't know, any number of things. Or would that typically show buttons? How would you handle something like that?
So there's different ways of handling it, and it's all about setting expectations like lawyers do all the time with their clients. So the expectation, there's two types. One is like a choose your own adventure, right? Where you click yes or no. You don't want them to give like random feedback and just type in text, because you might not be able to handle that at that point, or you don't want to go sideways in the conversation. You want to keep it on track. The second way is where you actually employ natural language processing. So I would say for straightforward applications where you're trying to get the lead in the door, you want to keep it on rails, on track. So it might be choose your own adventure, yes, no, and you just have them going forward. If it's a client where you're not available, but you want to make frequently asked questions and their answers available to them after hours or on the weekends or holidays or what have you, or the same for potential leads, or potential clients, you would set up natural language processing. So you would have where they have an opportunity to ask a question, and it could be open-ended. So the other part is closed-ended with choose your own adventure. This is open-ended. And then you would build into the system different questions that would trigger the answers that you have to serve up. And so,
and do you have to anticipate every variation, or is the system smart enough to say, hey, this is probably what they asked?
So
where they're going, because maybe it recognizes a couple words or something like that.
Yeah, so we have both. We have keyword identification. So like if they have a keyword where you're just wanting to, okay, they said this, so here's the answer, we could do that. But we also have more robust natural language processing where it goes like, like, what is an apple? Or what's an apple? An apple is what? An apple is what kind of thing? And you could have a different type of question, but it's basically asking the same thing that we recognize as human beings. They're trying to find out what is an apple. It's a fruit. And so we could serve up an answer based on variations in the way a question is asked. We can do that. LawDroid is sophisticated enough to do that. And actually, that system is very similar to Dialogflow, which Google uses, but we actually built our own, rolled our own system that I developed over a course of a few months with a data scientist that has done work for major banks in Europe. And yeah, he helped us to build our own system, and it works pretty well.
That's really cool stuff. I mean, I'm excited you're going to give me a demo of LawDroid so I can play around with it, right?
For sure.
This sounds like a lot of fun. I can think of hey mom, I need something. I'll be like, go fill out the form, and it'll, if it needs to route to a human, it will do that,
That's an idea, Gabriela, like, like a virtual mom or virtual dad that just takes.
There are times, where I like, hey mom, can I have the iPad? It's like, did you do your homework? No. Okay. Like, here's your answer, right? So my kids are not there yet, but I'm already like, I'm gonna get this thing really sophisticated by the time they're typing. Okay, we're gonna make this happen.
Yep, huge market for that.
I know it's not what you envisioned, but I think it can work. So one question I have for you, and this is something I ask often of my guests, especially those that come to talk about technology or maybe services that they provide. What are some questions that people should be asking or thinking about and when they're evaluating chatbot? And I think here we should also say like live chat options, or essentially chat options for the websites. What should they be thinking about that maybe they're not, or that will help them make a good decision on what will be right for them?
Sure. I think, the first question that comes to everyone's mind is pricing. And everyone tends to focus on how much it costs, how much per month. Is it, a year up front? Like, how does it work out with cost? And that's totally important. And I get it. I mean, I've been there on the other side, having to spend my own money, and I don't want to spend more than I have to. But I think it's really important to consider, like, what is the value you're getting for your money? Because if you're getting like, 2 pieces of bread versus a loaf of bread, you want to get the most value for what you're spending. And so you want to look at features, but you also want to look at the benefits. Like, what is this doing for you? Like, if it's the front end application of capturing leads, well, that could be really, really valuable because you're spending thousands of dollars per month to capture leads. The more you get, the more money the more ROI you're getting. So you want to look at that value. Like, what is the purpose of what you're doing? Why are you doing this? Why are you considering getting a chatbot? And if it's lead capture, that's great. If it's client intake, it's even better. And the more pieces of the puzzle through the whole client lifecycle that you could put together, like the milestone check-ins, like document automation, like review capture. If you put all of that together, it's a whole load of value that you're getting for your money. And so you want to think about that. What are you getting?
Yeah, one thing I also think is interesting to bring up is, especially if they're looking at automation and chatbots, along the lines of the value that you're talking about, you mentioned you have templates that it can be turnkey, and all you need to do is customize the color and throw in your law firm name or something like that. So it's also about how quickly you can get something up and running that's functioning for your firm, because I see people make investments in technology all the time, and maybe they get stuck in a contract or a service, and then you don't, you all of a sudden find out that it's going to take 3 months or 6 months to implement. And I mean, most attorneys I know, and most firms I know, they don't have time to put that in, right? So again, I know that we have a similar ethos in that regard, that we like things to be to streamline and to be easy to implement. So I love you talking about the value, and time is value too.
Yeah, and if you don't have enough time in the day to put it together, or you don't want to learn how to do it, even though it's easy to get started, we do have built for you programs. So like, if you need our assistance, we've done it thousands of times before, we can help you with your build out.
That's also great, because especially if someone wants something maybe extra sophisticated, or they have, a 10-page medical malpractice form or something like that, that maybe they don't have an assistant that can help with that. It's nice to hear that's an option.
Definitely. We're here to help.
Awesome. Well, I will open it up to questions if anyone has any, but I do also want to urge you guys, I'm sure that you're as curious as I am. I've put into the chat where you can book a demo of LawDroid. It'll take you to the website. There's lots of great resources to engage with there. But I mean, I'm going to be booking a demo with you, Tom. It's been so long since I've seen it. I'm excited to see it. And then if anyone has any questions for me or Tom while we're here, and of course, on the screen now, you can see where to find us. While we see if we have any questions come in, Tom, do you have any last thoughts or things that you want to share with our audience today? Ooh, good question coming in. We'll have to ask that.
Oh yeah, where's it?
We had a question come in if we have an integration. Well, I mean, not yet, but I'm going to do this demo. I'm excited to see how we can maybe create some additional value for our mutual clients, because hearing you talk, especially about things that happen during the lifetime of a case, a lot of people like that to stream from one direction. So I think we can definitely continue that conversation.
So one thing I would point out, and something to look forward to, is in probably at the end of October, I'm actually going to be releasing what I'm calling the LawDroid Manifesto. And so the LawDroid Manifesto, it's not like Ted Kaczynski in a cabin in the forest somewhere.
That's good. That's good. Okay.
Yeah. And it's not going to be thousands of pages long either. But really, my intention is to get out there these principles that I believe are the way we will practice law going forward. And I'm purposely not saying in the future, because I think the future is now. It's just a matter of equally distributing it by engaging with the types of principles that we'll use to drive our practices in the future using automation. And chatbots, by the way, too, that term is just, I mean, it's going to go by the wayside, because really what it's talking about is automated robotic systems. This is the AI, the robots that we've been talking about for a while, but it's a friendly, additional added value version of it that is going to and has pervaded our lives.
I'm really looking forward to that. So October, you'll share that with us all. But I really like what you said there, that, I think that hearing you talk about some of these features that are part of LawDroid, we all hear that term chatbot, but it feels small, right? And that's not what this is. Like, there's just a lot of expansive potential uses for this technology, and we're all engaging with it in our lives inevitably, and we're experiencing it done well, we're experiencing it done poorly, but it's here to stay. And I think smart businesses, smart law firms are going to be implementing this technology. We had another great question come in, and I almost going to rephrase it, like, how hard is it to implement? Like, if someone's got an existing website, I mean, hosted in a variety of places, is this something that's really easy to turn on? What does that look like?
It really is easy to turn on, and it doesn't require you shifting how you're, running your business right now or your website. Probably seen a ton of services out there where they have like a little code, a little JavaScript embed code that you drop into your website. And that's exactly
like your Google Analytics too. You've got to do the same thing if you want to track your website visitors, which if you're not, everyone, please set up your Google Analytics account and make sure that you're doing that. Yeah, so you can just drop it like in the footer of your site or something like that, and then it pops up just like another widget or something like that you might be using.
Yeah, if you're using like WordPress or Weebly or any, easy website creation tool, they usually have a place where you could drop in codes, and that's where you would just paste in the LawDroid code, and then the bot would automatically appear on your website.
Awesome. Okay, well that seems easy enough. Well, it looks like we don't have any other questions coming in now. I will say we keep an eye on these questions even after the webinar. So if you think of anything, drop it in here, and I can always pass it on to Tom and make sure that they gets back to you. And then I urge you all to check out the demo. I'm really excited to see more of it myself. And Tom, thank you so much for joining me today.
Thank you so much, Gabriela. It was a pleasure to catch up with you and then share the word about LawDroid. I really appreciate it.
Wonderful. Well, thank you everyone for joining us today. We'll be back here next month with another Conversations webinar, so keep an eye out for that. We'll share that in the typical channels. And Tom, thank you again. It's been a true pleasure.
Same here.